Welcome to the Life and Leadership Podcast, where we discuss business, leadership, and friendship. I'm Zach Gable.
And I'm Jared Toach. Thank you for joining us today.
Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. And we are glad you have joined us again today.
Absolutely.
Jared, you've had a long day of travel. Welcome back to Indiana.
Yes, thank you.
And glad that you made it back safely. We discussed on the phone earlier a little bit about what we were going to talk about. We've had a few ideas rolling around in these brains of ours. And
Few?
Yeah. And so we came up with one, and it's a good one. It's a spicy one. Spicy talk. We'll get hate mail on this one.
I don't know how spicy I would consider this topic.
We are going to talk about apathy today.
Yes, apathy.
And how apathy can affect not only leadership, how it can affect a team, a whole business.
Individuals. Everybody.
And so apathy in the workplace and how to avoid it.
Prevent it.
How to prevent it, how to recognize it whenever it happens. And I think I could speak for myself, at least. I think probably most people, though, at some point in their journey of life have come through a stage where they've dealt with some apathy.
Absolutely. I think we all have.
Yeah.
I would be lying to myself if I said that I had never reached that point in my life, personally or professionally.
Yeah. So we're going to discuss that today. And Jared, briefly earlier, we talked about some things with apathy. And I think actually the very first time we talked about it a week or two ago was disinterest. No, it wasn't even a week ago. It was, anyway, a few days ago we talked about it. And the first word used was disinterest in leadership and how it can affect your team, how it can affect everyone, not just the person that is disinterested in a project or in the business itself, whatever the category may be. And so, let's start there.
So, like always, what is apathy? That's the big question. So you have to identify something before you tackle it. So what is apathy to you?
Apathy to me is kind of a word I just use, a disinterest, lack of care, no fire, no passion. And what about you? What are your...
Yeah, so I would say it's a bit, some people might debate this, but a bit disengaged. Sometimes people say disengaged is slightly different from apathy, but
apathy probably leads to disengagement,
or part of apathy is disengagement, but not having that zest for life type of situation. And then also in the workplace, just not being engaged, not being really involved, and just kind of, I'm here. I'm doing my job, but I can't say that I'm doing any more than just this right here. Not necessarily generating new ideas or thoughts or for your organization, for yourself, for life. Those are times when we slip into apathy.
Could we use the term dead? No zeal.
Yeah. So
just kind of there.
So I think when we talk about, how can we prevent from, and I think we all have been there, and we both stated that. We've all been in this state of mind, this frame before in our workplace, in our personal lives, all of that. I know I've experienced it. And sometimes it's brought on by personal issues, personal problems, situations, things like that. But you go into a workplace and there might be projects going on, and you do the basics to get the project done, but you're not really the gears aren't really turning. You're not generating new thoughts and new ideas, and you're just okay, fine. Kind of you show up to work, and there's your few that you speak to, and then it's kind of it.
One word we've used quite a bit that you've used a lot is creativity. So no creativity.
The creativity bombs, so if you have your meter of here's the creative mind and the creative person, it bombs. And that could be a whole other topic about what fosters creativity, because this whole separate world of, I believe in education, has either kills it or fosters it, but that's a whole other. So it either promotes apathy or,
Yeah.
which is very true.
Yeah.
That's a total other topic about how educational systems can promote apathy by staunching creativity, but and how to prevent that. But I think like today we want to talk about, what do you do to prevent it? How do you recognize it? So you kind of have to know like what it is. One of the things that we did talk about is staying engaged with what you're doing. So from a personal perspective, I avoid apathy even by engaging in the work, engaging whatever it is that I'm doing, like staying completely engaged in it, having conversations about it, talking to other people about it. So with our podcast, for example, we can become apathetic when it comes to the podcast. So if we're not talking about it, if we're not staying engaged with what we're doing, things like that, we can definitely become, we can begin to show signs of apathy, just like, okay, it is what it is. And then you run the risk when you start down this pathway of apathy and you're not being engaged, you run the risk of like something flopping or failing or not, being what it could be, right? So I think when we talk about being engaged, so as from a person, as just an individual, a person in life, a person in a workplace, individual in a workplace, staying engaged in your work, keeping that fire and passion going about what you do and what you love and those types of things. But then on the flip side of that, I think the employer or your leader has a responsibility to also keep the employees engaged and to keep them excited about the work. Because if you're in education, it's not easy work. Your work's not easy work. There's a lot of fields and most work is not like 100% easy all the time, right? But when leadership is constantly engaging people, keeping them excited about what they're doing, it makes it easy for an individual to come in and be engaged. If the environment is created to be engaging, then it's less likely that apathy is going to settle in. Like you just begin to foster that engagement, which makes for a better workplace, better work environment.
It seems like in order to prevent apathy, it's got to be on multiple levels. You mentioned on the individual level,
right?
On the leadership level,
absolutely.
It's got to be. It has to be on many different levels, and it has to be that's why we call it a team. It has to be
absolutely. And I think not to like just jump in and interrupt here, but I think you said it perfectly when it has to be on multiple levels, because too many times I know myself, blame others or other things or events for causing apathy within my work, right? So I laughed. This is hilarious because last night I think I texted you and I said, I really need to get work done. And yes, it was like past working hours and all that kind of stuff, but I had more stuff that I needed to do. And I said, I'm just being really, I don't remember what I said. I'm just unmotivated or something like that. And you said, quit scrolling on Instagram and you'll get your motivation back.
That was just a friend being a friend.
No, absolutely. But there is personal response. I was like, what? He's probably true. Especially since I'd sent you like 4 reels in a row.
That's exactly what.
That's what I figured. But anyways, so there's responsibility on multiple levels.
Sure.
As an individual, you have to take responsibility, a certain level of responsibility for your engagement and making sure you are bringing your whole self to the table, right? And then on the leadership level, they have to make sure that they are cultivating an environment where it is engaging to be. Not saying that it's an environment easy to be in, right? And I think about that all the time, like especially, and I apologize for keeping, referring back to the early childhood field, but that's what I know, that's where I come from, education. So especially if you are walking into a room full of maybe screaming kids or crying kids or kids that have just been on a long weekend break. Any of my educator friends understand that when you have those long weekends, oftentimes that first day back is a little rough. So, those are parts of life. So it's, but that you come in though fully engaged and you have that personal responsibility, but then also leadership has that responsibility to make sure that that environment is cultivating engagement. Employees engaging.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, one way that I think on the leadership side, one way that you can help your team and yourself to, avoid this apathy and being disengaged is to, this is going to be my favorite part of the whole podcast, is to have fun, to keep the workplace fun. And Jared, you actually probably, I think you received some text messages and phone calls this week from our office staff.
Some of it I slightly instigated.
Yes, I heard, yes. So in our office, we make sure that we're constantly having fun. And I believe that helps productivity. I believe that helps camaraderie. It helps unity in our office staff. And I love to be a part of it because I want to be engaged with our team. Each one of us in the office has a Nerf gun, and we will sporadically and randomly have a Nerf gun fight and just attack people, when they're least expecting it. It's just a blast. Well, the other day, you had a picture of one of our office ladies with blue powder all in her hair, all around her back, everything. And so, that's what are those things called? The cannons?
Yes. You see, and
confetti cannons.
Except it was a powder cannon.
Yes, and we thought it was a confetti cannon.
No, she knew it was powder.
She knew, but I didn't know. And so I grabbed it thinking it was a confetti cannon, and I was hiding and shot her with it. And as soon as the blue powder came out, I was like, "Oh no!"
Which is perfect.
This is going to be bad.
Which is perfect because when I ran into her at the store when she was talking about getting these, and I said, "Just get them."
Yeah.
I said he is very OCD about like glitter and anything powdery. I said, but he's like he has this bungee cord. Like he'll go over the edge. It'll put him over the edge for like 10 minutes. And I said, he's got this long bungee cord and he just bounces back. I was like, he'll be fine. So I think it's great that you actually were the one. It wasn't her that she didn't actually make the mess. You made the mess.
She went and got 2 more after that.
Oh, well, then that's perfect.
Yeah, but it was a blast. And I think that helps, Jared, to keep people involved, to keep it active and lighthearted. And I think in probably just about every business and in every industry, you're going to have those days that are horrible, that just stink. You just want to go back home and go to bed.
Oh,
100%. Started out horrible. You had to deal with a customer or someone that is unreasonable, whatever.
Or who's not so polite, yeah.
And you just it's just a bad day. Everybody has those days. But I just love to keep it lighthearted, and so anyway, that's one way.
So I think
having fun.
Yeah. So I think that we talked about engagement, and then we kind of morphed into this bit about like keeping the environment a fun place to be, so then it can kind of become an engaging place to be. But I think it's a perfect segue into kind of what we talked about next as another way to prevent apathy, or to recognize if there's a lack of this next item in place that, there might be apathy can settle in. But that's the culture of an organization. So taking the temperature reading of your culture, climate and culture within a building. And I know several years ago, that was the big thing and the big rage of like companies and organizations taking a climate and culture, let's examine our climate and culture and get the readings on that and all that kind of stuff, which is great. You just have to continue to do something about it. Yeah. Like climate and culture, it's not you take a measurement once and then we set some goals and then we never revisit it again, right? But culture is something you have to cultivate. Like you're cultivating the culture, and culture is not just how much fun you have, but it's it's your connections with your superiors, with people, with your colleagues, with your coworkers. And once again, it goes back into this multi-layered component of it takes all of us to prevent apathy from setting in. Yeah. So it takes you as an individual helping create that culture, right? Creating that, whether it's a fun, engaging culture, whether it's I always say, and maybe this is just because of my profession and field I'm in, but you know that this is true in any workplace. It doesn't matter, any workplace, but like gossip. Oh, backbiting, gossip, all that kind of stuff. Once again, you can blame the leadership all you want to.
Sure.
But you as the person chose to engage in that.
Yeah.
So there's personal responsibility. So if you want to prevent apathy from settling in and from that, then you have to also be the keeper of the culture.
Yeah.
And along with the leadership, right? So leadership also has to do it. And then you have to stay connected. Like leadership, another way of cultivating that phenomenal culture is leadership staying attuned with those who they are leading. We talk about attunement with children, all of that, but it's the same thing is true with leaders staying tuned into what their employees are feeling, thinking, that there's definitely two-way communication.
Yes.
Like people feel like they can come and talk to you, but once again, it's a two-way street, right? So like if a leader does have an open door and you do have a problem, like you do have to go to your leader and say like, hey, here's what it is, right? And then as a leader, like you also have to be willing to have that open door, you know?
It's funny you said connections. I actually had that written down. It's been, I guess, a month now, coming up on a month. Anyway, we went on a family vacation and we were gone for about 10 days. And then we arrived back on a Sunday night and I went to work. I went to the office Monday, and then Monday night ended up in the ER with horrible back pain. And it put me down for about 2 weeks, maybe even a little bit longer. And I felt so disconnected with my team for, one, the vacation was long enough, not having much communication during the vacation, but then being down and not being able to, I couldn't move for several days, about a week. I couldn't really walk or anything. And I felt so disconnected, and I started reaching out to everyone and just making phone calls and just saying, just kind of checking the temperature and seeing how everybody is doing. And I absolutely hated that. I hated feeling so disconnected, because that is a major thing in keeping apathy out, is staying connected and taking that temperature. And not only that, just on a personal level, I love being connected with our team. We have a great team, and so I love being connected with them and having that relationship, just to call and talk. How are you doing?
And here's the other thing, though, is that I would just say to you, and I'm not saying this in any way, shape, or form that you've cultivated that type of climate or culture. One person cannot be the keeper, though, of that connection and culture. And oftentimes that is the case. So you described a situation where you're out for 2 weeks and then like you're feeling very disconnected, yada, yada, yada. You're worried about the climate and culture at the building, the workplace. And here's the thing, like you have to take responsibility for yourself, but also trust that if you have created a climate and culture at that facility, that they should be able to continue. Because if your climate and culture that it keeps apathy from settling in is revolving around one person, when that one person is gone, then your climate and culture is gone, right? And I have seen it so many times, and sometimes I've created those spaces myself, like where I'm the generator of like this idea, that idea, or feel like I am. And then when I'm not there, it doesn't continue that, because there was like no buy-in. People weren't like, it was kind of this facade, and it was generated all by one person.
And that can be a whole nother.
Oh, that's a whole nother topic. Delegating.
Yeah, that could be a whole nother podcast on delegation and the correct ways to delegate, because so many people think delegation is just
tell somebody, we could get off. We don't want to go on that one.
That'd be a different topic. That's
podcast. One of my hot button points is that, and I think
delegation is such a
so
good thing.
let's take a pause here for a second.
It's such a good thing when it's done right, but there's so many people that don't know how to delegate.
So actually this does connect with apathy, so we'll just take
just a brief snippet.
We'll take a brief snippet. So the key is people oftentimes just delegate work or delegate certain tasks or projects to other individuals, and they just like, okay, and then walk away. And
Which
they
is
just
not delegating, it's just
no, it's just passing. It's passing on work,
yes.
and that's not engaging people. And so what happens then? Apathy does set in, right? Because then when you're not excited about getting another project, because guess what? When you got another project, if you are delegating in such a way as like you just expect them to take care of it, and then it's not right, and so then you're upset that it's not exactly how you would have taken care of it.
Yeah.
It's because it wasn't a team effort.
Yeah.
To take care of it. And then that's when apathy sets in, because then why should I give 110%?
Yeah.
But delegation is a huge topic for me. And I think it's because I come from a coaching background where, where I learned a lot about coaching. Wasn't always the best coach, but tried to try to get better and better at it over the years. But, yeah, definitely where you can't just say like, do this. And then like, there's no additional guidance or anything like that support.
So there's our snippet on delegation. Now back to your regular scheduled program.
Yes. Here we go. One of the other areas, and we talked about this briefly in an earlier conversation when we were discussing this topic, but is work-life balance. So having a good work-life balance helps to ward off apathy, because when you're wore out, when you're absolutely exhausted, you go in to do your job and it's not happening
There's no
to
extra.
The best. There's no extra to give.
There's nothing.
And then you begin to get resentment, right? But once again, I always say this goes back on both the individual and it goes back on the company. So companies obviously making sure that they are giving a good work-life balance, but then also individuals making sure they are utilizing time frames and spaces to the best of their abilities too, because you are working for an organization, you are working for a company, and it's not that they own you per se, but like you do want to give your best, right? Yeah. But so it's not like, and I think I'm going to call in every other Friday and every other Monday. And if you are at that level where you have to do that, then you might want to find another job or some other place. There's something wrong. There's either like you need to seek some additional help or your workplace is really toxic.
I think one thing to consider is, what are your reasons for going to work? If your reason to go to work is just because you have to have a paycheck and you have to survive, then apathy is right around the corner. If it's not already there, but if your company has a vision that's shared, and if you are buying into that vision, if you feel like you have a purpose when you go into work, and that's one thing, Jared, that in our company, in our business, it can be a challenge sometimes. And it was either last year sometime or the year before during one of our company meetings. I still have it written down on my computer. I go back and look at it every now and then. Is that I talked about that we are, as a company, we are here to serve.
Right.
And it's more than just a job. And in our industry, it can be challenging to grasp that. In the garbage industry, you feel like you're just out and you pick up the same, 500 stops on Monday and 400 stops on Tuesday, and it can be a challenge. But whenever you have that vision and you have that heart to serve, and you realize that you can be more than just picking up these 500 people on Monday, but you're serving them and you are providing the best service possible to them. You're going above and beyond, and you're doing it with a smile on your face. And then it puts a purpose in you, and it gives you a reason. You're not just going to work for a paycheck, but you're going to work because there are 500 people on Monday that are depending on me to provide the best service possible. and to serve the community. So
And so while you're saying this, and I know some people are probably thinking, but I have to have money and I have to have this job.
Sure.
Absolutely. And so then I thought of these two scenarios, and I apologize. I'm using myself because that's really the person I know myself. Like, so I remember in high school, so I had multiple jobs. I did lawn care. I did all kinds of stuff. Like I did all sorts of stuff. Like
I think every teenager in college.
I think my first job was at 13 or 14, and I got a permit to work. And I remember that. And I worked at a local place for a while. And and then from that point on, the only minor pause I took was when I did student teaching, but I actually was still working a side hustle, a side job to generate money, because essentially at that point in time, like, we were in student teaching, and when you were student teaching, there was no time for a job. I mean, unless you're staying up all night and then you weren't giving your all the next day. But anyway, so I had a job from that point on. But I remember when I started a job at a local grocery store, I think I was 16 years old when I started that job, and I needed money. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I had to have money. But one of the things, and it's very odd, I was really shy. I was a shy person and didn't, could be sometimes awkward or something around people. But I did like people. Like, but I just didn't know, like, quite how to interact or anything like that. But I was a cashier, and I'll never forget anticipating seeing some of the same customers that would come through the lines, and they wouldn't care if my line was backed up to the green bean aisle. Like, they didn't care. They would get in my line because they always came through and they talked to me. Or they would come in shopping together. They would ask, what day are you working? And I had like several customers, and I loved that. Like, so then I had like this joy about going to my job. Now, did I, like, every day of working, did I make mistakes? Was I always the greatest cashier? No, probably was not. I was a young teenager, but I was giving my all, and I really enjoyed connecting with people, and I needed money. And so it was serving two purposes.
Had you not been giving your all, they wouldn't have come to your aisle.
Right. But the interesting piece was I was not giving that because I wanted them to come to my lane or because of any other reason. But I was just like, I did that, and I started enjoying like the benefits and all that from that. And then the other thing was when I worked for a local bakery, and I was going to school in education. That had nothing to do with education. I was going for education. That had nothing to do with education. But I loved connecting with the customers who would have the same customers. In fact, probably as recently as, I think maybe 6 months ago, I ran into someone who I used to serve, who used to come in as a regular customer, and they were like, wait a second, I know you. And then for a long time, there was a lady who worked at the airport who would come in weekly for her father, and she and I, every time we saw each other, we would connect. But so it was more than just a job, right? I'm sorry, we got off on those tangents.
Yeah. And so I think the bottom line is to find something that you're passionate about, whatever industry it may be, whatever job it may be, whatever position it may be.
It may not be that you're passionate about making cars, but it may be that you're passionate about making sure like products like are really solid quality. And when you see that type of car driving on the road, you're like, I had a part in that. Like, and feel pride.
So in the education industry, in your world, that's one thing that I say that all the time, is that teachers should not be teachers if they're not passionate about it. Because especially it's in the world we live in today,
it's difficult.
If you're not passionate about it, you're going to either hate life or be out of there very quickly. So find something that you're passionate about, that you want to go get up in the morning and you're not dreading going to work. And because the bottom line is we all work because we need money
and I think
to live. But it can be a whole lot more than that. You don't have to get up and dread going to work. You can get up and you can be passionate about, I get to go do this. And on top of that, I'm getting paid.
Yeah,
know?
absolutely. And I think then that comes in and helps with the work-life balance because then there are days that require more than other days, but then and if you bring in passion to the work and then your boss recognizes the passion that's in the work, and they cultivate that climate and culture of trust and all of those types of things, you having that balance of knowing like, okay, it is okay for me to take a vacation, or it is okay for me to do this X, Y, and Z, and making sure, or it is okay for me to say, like, hey, this weekend, I'm not going to be able to, like, we're going out of town, we're doing things, I'm not going to be able to respond to your emails, phone calls, text messages, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, kind of shutting off from the world.
Yeah.
Or after 5 o'clock tonight, like I've got dinner and soccer and yada, all these other things. And then kind of like drawing that work-life balance because you will be a happier person. The people you work with will be happier and you're going to avoid apathy.
Yeah.
You're going to, not guaranteed because apathy can sneak in there, but
so we want to know, what ways do you avoid apathy? What techniques? What you can leave comments.
Absolutely.
You can email us, lifeandleadershipevv@gmail.com. But we want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear.
And we might even actually post it as a question on Facebook because I'd love to know.
That's a good idea.
And how do you recognize? So that's one of the things, like recognizing when apathy is starting to set in, because just like with a heart attack, a stroke, anything like that, they always talk about symptoms, signs, all of that prior to something happen. How do you recognize when apathy comes in so that you can start preventing it or start diagnosing? Like, okay, wait, I'm working in a really toxic culture, and so this is not just me. And otherwise, apathy is going to begin to rule and reign in my life, which shuts down creativity, which shuts down my passion, which shuts down all these things. So I need to exit stage left.
So let us know your thoughts on that. We would love to hear from you. And we'd also love to have you subscribe and like and follow and all of those great things.
Yeah.
That helps us
Absolutely.
out. Share it. Share a podcast. And we just want to be a help to people. So hopefully this is helping you. And Jared, any closing thoughts on this podcast?
Well, I think just making sure that the signs when apathy is setting in for every individual that might look different, but also know that this is a multi-layer prevention strategy. Yeah. It's both individuals and it's both leadership it takes to prevent apathy within a.
And I wonder if you could have a partner, a buddy. Maybe not in leadership, but a coworker, someone that, you're comfortable with and they're comfortable with you. And you can say, hey, I feel like there may be some apathy setting in.
And there we go with that's a whole other topic of discussion. But having people who are real and honest with you, who just say like, hey, like I noticed lately. Yeah.
And it all revolves around culture. Culture and trust.
Yep, absolutely.
We could go on and on and on.
I know.
Thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching or listening. And we hope this has been helpful. Remember to hit that like, share, follow, and we will see you on the next one.
See you next time.
Take care.